Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Hello, you're listening to Bloomberg UK Politics. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Lizzy Burden.
Now, there are two crucial issues for UK politics, I'd argue, Lizzy. Boosting economic growth, which the government says it's focused on addressing. And the other issue lies quite far from Westminster in who occupies the White House. The next US president will arguably have more of an impact on global affairs than even they will on the 50 states in the US. And for the UK, it's going to have an influence on everything from our support to Ukraine, to Israel, Gaza, even green industries, EVs, the US-UK trade deal.
Well, I'd argue that the two are connected. Who's in the White House and the future of the UK economy? We keep thinking that inflation is a story of government's past, and we've got inflation back at the Bank of England's 2% target. But if we do get a protectionist occupant of the White House who puts tariffs on everything coming in from China, we could feel the spillover effects and have to talk about inflation all over again.
Yeah, absolutely. So after the shock then of the assassination attempt against Donald Trump only a week ago, on Sunday we saw the news that Joe Biden is stepping aside and backing Kamala Harris as the candidate for the Democratic Party in November's election. So I want to spend a bit of time thinking about what we know about Kamala Harris, the vice president, what sort of president she might make as she sets out her pitch to US voters. I mean, unlike Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves, Harris isn't a politician I've met, Lizzy.
No, and she isn't someone I've met either. I think that it's fair to say a lot of Brits listening to this podcast, Europeans indeed, won't know much about her. So it's a good job we've talked to someone who's followed her for 3 decades. Dan Moraine is a journalist and author of the biography Kamala's Way, An American Life. And he wrote his first article about her way back in 1994.
Yeah, remember that Harris was actually elected to both of the big jobs on her CV as San Francisco's district attorney in 2003 and then as California's Attorney General. She is a prosecutor. She is a lawyer by training. Then she became a senator in 2017. Remember that brief run at the presidency that she tried in 2020 before becoming the vice president to Joe Biden. She has stood in, of course, for President Biden in a lot of the big meetings, including in Europe, the Munich Security Conference, for example. She also attended Rishi Sunak's AI Safety Summit only last year. Dan Moraine, though, has told me that despite Donald Trump saying that Harris may be easier to beat than Biden, he says people who underestimate Kamala Harris often end up losing, and he had some interesting examples.
For a person who will be on the most public of stages, running for the president of the United States, she doesn't tell you very much about herself, her personal views. She can be a very closed book. She's a fascinating character, a true Californian, somebody who only could have come from California, I think. Her mother was an immigrant from India, her father an immigrant from Jamaica. They met at that most California of institutions, the University of California at Berkeley, in the 1960s. She is truly a product of California. You can't imagine any other state that could have produced quite like Kamala Harris.
Do you think her background then, as you say, we know much more about her public life then, her background as a prosecutor, then as the AG, the Attorney General for California, do you think that's going to help or hurt her presidential campaign? How will it shape this campaign?
Well, I think it can only help her campaign. She was a prosecutor. She put people in prison. She's running against a candidate who's been convicted of 34 felonies. Prosecutor versus a felon. Seems to me to be a pretty stark contrast. She will be portrayed as being a California liberal. She certainly is liberal, and she's certainly a Californian, but she spent a lot of her career putting people who had committed serious crimes in prison. The focus of much of her work as a prosecutor was to go after sex trafficking, crimes against children. I think it's kind of hard to attack that. Now, she opposed the death penalty. The death penalty, her stand on the death penalty, certainly cost her some support when she was district attorney in San Francisco, the main prosecutor in the county of San Francisco. I'm not sure that issue is necessarily going to resonate quite so much in 2024. We'll see.
Do you think she's going to be able to unite the Democratic Party behind her? It's still not a certainty that she will become the Democratic Party nominee.
Well, she's got so much momentum built up this first day. It's been quite impressive. The last report I saw was that she had raised $60 million today, which is just a phenomenal sum, if that's true. Of course, somebody could mount a challenge to her. It's possible, but I think she has a huge amount of momentum right now. It would be very tough to knock her off as the Democratic nominee.
In terms of her best qualities or what her team might put forward, what sort of president do you think she might make?
It's a question for every vice president. Can a vice president be a Harry Truman, who was Franklin Delano Roosevelt's vice president? Nobody thought very much of him when he was vice president. He didn't have much of a role at all in the Roosevelt administration, and yet he became a very consequential president. So will Kamala Harris be a Harry Truman? We will see. People who underestimate Kamala Harris tend to lose. And so I wouldn't underestimate her. In terms of her position, she's going to be a Biden Democrat. She's going to be supportive of Israel. She's certainly going to be supportive of the war in Ukraine. She's going to be very supportive of NATO. So she would continue the Biden tradition in those ways. I have no doubt.
What do you think drives Kamala Harris? How do you think she's going to deal with Donald Trump? He's said that Harris would be easier to defeat than Biden.
Again, I think people who underestimate Kamala Harris end up losing. And he would not be the first man to underestimate Kamala. She can be formidable. She can be a very good candidate. I moderated a debate that she had when she ran for Attorney General against a very accomplished prosecutor, the district attorney of Los Angeles County. So by all accounts, he should have won that race. He was very accomplished, but she bested him in that debate. I covered the one debate she had when she ran for the United States Senate in 2016. And, she's very good on her feet. So if Donald Trump thinks that she would be a pushover in the debate, I'm not so sure that he would be correct.
So that was journalist and author of the biography Kamala's Way in American Life, Dan Moraine, speaking to you, Caroline, earlier.
Yeah, and as a measure of the support and excitement around Harris's campaign, Democrats raised more than $50 million in just a matter of hours after Biden announced that he was dropping out. So that's why I thought it'd be very interesting to hear from someone, at the heart of the financial issue in these elections in the US.
Yeah, I do wonder if that's relief that Biden had stepped aside or excitement that potentially it'd be Kamala Harris taking over.
Yeah. Lindy Lee is a Biden-Harris delegate, and she's one of these so-called bundlers for the Democrats. So she kind of rustles up all of the interest and all of the big money donors. She told me that she thinks that a coronation actually wouldn't be a good idea, that there should be some kind of due process in terms of selecting the Democratic candidate. It was really interesting to hear what she had to say.
I'm hoping that everyone will have the good sense to rally behind her, but I also hope that we'll go through the process instead of accelerating everything to the virtual. I don't know if you heard about the August 1st virtual call. They were trying to push it forward. I don't think that's a good look, because in politics, perception is reality, and it looks like they were rushing it through. I don't think that's a good idea. I think we should wait until the proper time, which is August 19th. That's what I mean. I don't think we should truncate any calendars. Especially given how extraordinary the circumstances are already.
In terms of the donations, so again, a lot of this, in no small measure is the US election about money. Harris, it seems, or Biden dropping out, has meant a big upsweep in terms of money going into Democratic coffers. Do you think that's going to accelerate? Is that it? What do you think in terms of donations?
And you know what? Almost all of that was small dollar. So the big money hasn't even come yet. And I'm a big dollar, a fundraiser and a bundler and donor. I've been speaking with my fellow donors. We are so excited. We've been in kind of like in DEFCON mode for the past couple of weeks. I was joking that my life is now AD and BD, after debate and before debate. It was that drastic. Like, it shook the core of my system. I was with the president on the night of June 27th. It's like seared in my memory. This is the first time in weeks I remember anyone being truly happy about the situation. This is the first time. It's like I can breathe again. And I think a lot of donors are coming back from the sidelines. I've actually touched base with you. It's phenomenal because this one particular dear friend of mine he's like, no way, I'm not donating to this. Because, these are successful business people. You can't pull the wool over their eyes. That's not going to happen. They've made their fortunes because of a reason, and that's by identifying winning propositions. And a political campaign is also a business, right? It's multi-billion dollars, including the super PACs. It's designed to go bankrupt on election day. That's how it's supposed to work. But so right now it looks like her stock is rising. It looks like an IPO, and people want to get it.
Yeah, except that the polling is not there when, of course you have to take polls cautiously, but the polling so far doesn't show Harris, winning against Trump.
I also want to add a footnote that the polling doesn't take into account no advertisement has occurred yet with her at the top of the ticket. We've had no positive narratives go out with her as the presidential nominee. So, our firepower, our powder is still dry. It hasn't even happened yet. I'm excited to see the numbers change, and I expect that they will once we start pushing her as the nominee.
Okay, Lindy, we're sitting in Europe thinking about this, and the US president is so vitally important for what happens around the world. What do you think Harris, and maybe if it's a Harris-Shapiro ticket, would deliver on foreign policy for Europe when the concern in Europe is around NATO, Ukraine, and the US attitude to Israel? Those are huge, life and death decisions.
And you know what? I was just telling to someone, if Trump wins this election, I might go back to England. I'm not even kidding. I spent 3 years in Sheffield. And I don't want to risk living under a Trump regime. So Europe is, you guys have a tender spot in my heart. I think they will continue the fantastic work that Biden has done with NATO. I mean, under him, Finland of all countries joined. That is phenomenal work. And NATO, Harris and Shapiro will for sure continue that legacy, keeping our Western alliances strong, making sure that Russia doesn't continue to terrorize Ukraine, not abandoning Ukraine. These are essential issues. This is a matter of life or death. It truly is. That's not an overstatement.
Really fascinating conversation that with Lindy Lee, who again is a Biden-Harris delegate who fundraises for the Democrats. But Caroline, none of this changes the fact that actually neither Biden nor Kamala Harris can beat Trump according to the current polling. Let's see if that changes over the coming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see what happens with the Democratic Party convention, of course. I mean, it was a very unified event for Trump and J.D. Vance. Let's see if the Democrats can come up with their own sort of exciting event that will fire up their base and the voters. It's all still to play for. And it's something that I think we will be talking about in relation to UK politics in the weeks ahead.
Well, the argument would be that a coronation, yes, creates unity. The flip side is you could have a very public squabble, but at least in the eyes of the market, surely they would want some certainty here. But I have to wonder how Donald Trump is thinking about all this. Is he regretting picking J.D. Vance as his running mate now that he knows actually he's going to be standing against Kamala Harris? That's it from us for today. If you like the programme, don't forget to subscribe and give it 5 stars so that other people can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever you listen. This episode was produced by James Woolcock and our audio engineer was Sean Guastamakia. I'm Lizzy Burden. And I'm Caroline Hepker. We'll be back with more tomorrow. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg UK Politics. Listen weekdays at noon on DAB Digital Radio in London.